The morning of Dad's funeral was gray and overcast, matching the mood that had settled over our family like a heavy blanket. I stood at the edge of the gathering at Serenity Hills Memorial Park, watching my older brother Derek hold court near the gravesite. Even in grief, he couldn't help but command attention, his expensive black suit and polished demeanor drawing sympathetic nods from distant relatives and family friends. I kept my distance, wearing my only decent black dress, a simple piece I'd bought at a discount store 3 years ago. My shoes were scuffed but clean, my hair pulled back in a modest bun. To anyone watching, I probably looked like exactly what Derek always said I was, the family disappointment who never quite measured up. Emma, my Aunt Patricia approached me with a sad smile. "I'm so sorry for your loss, honey. Your father was such a good man." "Thank you, Aunt Pat. He really was." She glanced over at Derek, who was speaking with Father Martinez about the service details. "Your brother's handling all the arrangements, I see. So responsible of him." I nodded silently. Derek had indeed taken charge of everything: the funeral home, the flowers, the catering for the reception afterward. He'd made it clear from the moment Dad passed that he would handle all the important decisions, since I was obviously in no position to help with anything significant. "It must be expensive," Aunt Patricia continued, lowering her voice. "I know Derek's law firm is doing well, but funerals cost so much these days. I hope he's not stretching himself too thin." Before I could respond, Derek himself appeared at my elbow, having finished his conversation with the priest. He looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Emma, try to look presentable for the service," he said quietly, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. "People are watching." "I'm fine, Derek. Are you?" He glanced pointedly at my dress, my shoes, my entire appearance. "When's the last time you bought something new? Or went to a decent salon?" I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment, especially with Aunt Patricia standing right there, but I kept my voice steady. "I look appropriate for a funeral." "Barely." He turned to our aunt with a practiced smile. "Aunt Pat, thank you so much for coming. I know Dad would have appreciated it." "Of course, Derek. I was just telling Emma how impressed I am that you've managed everything. The flowers are beautiful. And this cemetery is absolutely gorgeous. It must have cost a fortune." Derek's chest puffed up with pride. "Only the best for Dad. Serenity Hills is the most prestigious memorial park in the county. The waiting list is usually 2 years, but I pulled some strings." I bit my tongue, watching him bask in the praise. Let him have his moment, I thought. There would be time for truth later. The service itself was beautiful. Father Martinez spoke eloquently about Dad's kindness, his work ethic, his devotion to family. Friends and colleagues shared memories of his generosity and humor. Derek delivered a polished eulogy about Dad's legacy and the importance of family honor. I chose not to speak publicly, though the priest had offered me the opportunity. Instead, I stood quietly in the back, letting Derek have the spotlight he so clearly needed. After the burial, people began making their way to their cars for the drive to the reception. That's when Derek cornered me near the large oak tree that overlooked Dad's final resting place. "Emma, we need to talk about your living situation," he said without preamble. "What about it?" "Dad's gone now. There's no one left to enable your lifestyle choices." He gestured vaguely at my appearance. "You're 32 years old, living in that studio apartment in the worst part of town, working part-time at a flower shop. It's pathetic." The word hit like a slap. "Derek." "No, let me finish." He stepped closer, his voice low but intense. You're pathetic, living in that dump. Real family contributes something meaningful to the world. Real family builds legacies, creates value, makes a difference. What have you ever done besides disappoint everyone who believed in you? I felt tears prick my eyes, but I held his gaze steadily. I've done more than you think. Like what? Arranging flowers? Living paycheck to paycheck? Dad spent 20 years worrying about you, wondering when you'd finally grow up and make something of yourself. His voice was getting louder now, drawing glances from the few remaining mourners. He left you some money in his will, but I'm not going to stand by and watch you waste it on your bohemian fantasies. Derek, this isn't the time. When is the time? He snapped. When you're 40? 50? Still living like a college student, still pretending that your artistic soul is more important than responsibility. He straightened his tie with angry precision. I'm successful because I make hard choices. I built a law practice from nothing. I own a house in Westfield, drive a BMW, contribute to my community. That's what adults do, Emma. That's what Dad wanted for both of us. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder I'd been carrying all day. Since you brought up contribution and success, Derek, I think there's something you should see. What's this? He took the folder with obvious reluctance. Property deed, I said simply. Go ahead and read it. He opened the folder, and I watched his expression change from annoyance to confusion to complete shock. His face went pale as he read the official documents, his hands actually trembling slightly. Actually, I own this entire memorial park, I said quietly as his eyes scanned the papers. Serenity Hills Memorial Park, all 200 acres, purchased 3 years ago through my holding company, Eternal Gardens Investment Group. Derek's mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. The prestigious memorial park with a 2-year waiting list that you're so proud of choosing for Dad. I own it. The beautiful landscaping, the marble monuments, the peaceful chapel where we just held the service. All mine. This can't be real, he stammered, looking back and forth between me and the deed. Oh, it's very real. Along with 6 other cemeteries and memorial parks across the state, 2 funeral homes, a monument company, and a grief counseling center. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Eternal Gardens is a multi-million-dollar business, Derek. We serve over 10,000 families a year with dignity and compassion. He was still staring at the papers in disbelief. But you work at a flower shop. I own the flower shop, along with 3 others. Sympathy arrangements and funeral flowers are a significant part of the memorial services industry. I smiled sadly. I also own the catering company that's providing food for Dad's reception this afternoon. How is this possible? His voice was barely a whisper. Remember when I dropped out of law school? I asked. You were so disappointed, so angry that I was throwing my life away. You told everyone I was having a breakdown, that I couldn't handle the pressure of real success. He nodded mutely. I wasn't having a breakdown, Derek. I was starting a business. I'd realized that the death care industry was stuck in the past, overpriced, impersonal, focused on profit over compassion. I wanted to create something different. I gestured toward beautifully maintained grounds around us. I started with one small cemetery in a rural town 2 hours from here. A family-owned place that was going under because they couldn't compete with the corporate chains. I bought it for almost nothing, then spent 2 years learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. The studio apartment, he said slowly, pieces clicking into place, is where I sleep when I'm working late at the downtown office. My actual home is the farmhouse on the hill just past the main entrance here. You probably drove right past it on your way in. Derek sank onto a nearby bench, still holding the property deed. The flower shop job gives me direct contact with families during their most difficult times. I learn what they need, what they're missing from traditional funeral services. Every arrangement I make, every conversation I have, helps me understand how to serve people better. A groundskeeper approached us respectfully. "Ms. Henderson? I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Wilson family is here for their 3 p.m. service. Should we begin setting up?" "Of course, Miguel. Use the Rose Garden Chapel and make sure the sound system is tested." The family requested acoustic guitars for the memorial music. "Yes, ma'am. And congratulations on the Forbes article, by the way. Very well deserved." As Miguel walked away, Derek looked at me with new eyes. "Forbes article? Young entrepreneurs disrupting traditional industries," I said with a slight shrug. "It comes out next month. Apparently, transforming the death care industry from the inside out is newsworthy." "How much?" He swallowed hard. "How much is the business worth?" Eternal Gardens is valued at approximately $47 million. My personal net worth is around $12 million, though most of it's reinvested in expansion and community programs. Derek put his head in his hands. "I don't understand. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why let us think you were struggling?" I sat down next to him on the bench, looking out over the peaceful grounds where Dad now rested. "Because this business is built on trust, Derek. Families trust me with their most precious memories, their deepest grief, their final farewells to the people they love most. I can't do that job properly if I'm thinking about impressing my family or proving my success to people who've already decided I'm a failure." "But Dad, he worried about you constantly." Dad knew. The words hung in the air between us. "I told him everything 3 months ago when he was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I wanted him to know that his little girl had actually made something of herself, even if it wasn't the kind of success you or Mom ever recognized." Derek's head snapped up. He knew. This whole time. He was so proud, Derek. He spent his last weeks visiting all the properties, meeting my employees, learning about the grief counseling programs, and the scholarship fund for funeral service students. I wiped away a tear. He said he finally understood why I'd walked away from law school. He said I'd found my calling. The reception today. Dad helped me plan it. He wanted his memorial to be an example of what we do here. Personal, meaningful, focused on celebrating life, rather than just mourning death. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. This is him last month, helping plant the rose bushes near the chapel. He insisted on getting his hands dirty. Derek stared at the photo of our father, grinning despite his illness, with soil on his hands and joy in his eyes. He looked so happy. He was happy. He said watching me build something that mattered to people gave him more satisfaction than any legal victory ever could. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching families visit their loved ones among the rolling hills and carefully tended gardens. A young couple was placing flowers on a small grave. An elderly man sat reading a book aloud to a headstone. A mother was teaching her toddler to blow kisses toward a memorial bench. "I've been horrible to you," Derek said finally. "You've been protecting the family image," I corrected gently. "You've been trying to live up to Dad's expectations the way you understood them. There's nothing wrong with being a successful lawyer, Derek. You've built something impressive too. But I've been judging you for 8 years based on appearances. I never asked what you were actually doing with your life. I just assumed." He trailed off, shaking his head. You assumed I was a screw-up because I didn't follow the traditional path. I understand that. But success isn't just about money or status symbols, Derek. It's about finding work that gives your life meaning. A text message buzzed on my phone. The catering team was ready to begin serving at the reception, and several of Dad's former colleagues wanted to speak with me about his final weeks. I should get going, I said, standing up. People are waiting. Derek stood too, still clutching the property deed. Emma, I owe you an apology. A massive apology. For today, for the last 8 years, for everything. You don't owe me anything. We both loved Dad, and we both wanted to make him proud. We just had different ideas about how to do that. Can I? Would you show me around? The business, I mean. I'd like to understand what you've built here. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. I'd love that. But maybe we should start with Dad's reception. I think he'd want us to focus on celebrating his life today. The catering company you own, Henderson Family Catering. We specialize in memorial receptions and celebration of life events. The food is all Dad's favorite dishes, prepared exactly the way Mom used to make them. As we walked toward the chapel where guests were gathering, Derek shook his head in amazement. $12 million. And you're still wearing a 3-year-old dress to your own father's funeral. Because the money isn't the point, Derek. The work is the point. Helping families say goodbye with dignity and love. That's the point. I think I'm beginning to understand that. We reached the chapel entrance, where dozens of people were sharing stories and memories of our father. Many of them were his former clients, people whose legal troubles he'd solved over the years. But I noticed something that made my heart swell with pride. Scattered throughout the crowd were families I'd served through Eternal Gardens, people who had experienced loss and found comfort in the compassionate care my team provided. Derek noticed them too. These people, they're not just here for Dad, are they? Some of them, no. They're here because they understand what it means to find someone who cares about their pain, who treats their grief as sacred instead of just another transaction. I gestured toward an elderly woman speaking quietly with Father Martinez. Mrs. Chen lost her husband last year. She was so grateful for the memorial service we created for him that she's become like family to me. When she heard about Dad, she insisted on coming to pay her respects. And that couple by the flowers? The Johnsons. They lost their teenage son in a car accident 2 years ago. It was my first year in business, and I was terrified I wouldn't be able to help them properly. But we created a celebration of his life that honored who he was, his love of music, his dream of becoming a teacher, his incredible sense of humor. They said it was exactly what they needed to begin healing. Derek was quiet for a long moment, watching the interactions around us with new eyes. You're not just running a business, you're building a community. That's exactly right. Death is universal, Derek. Every family faces loss. But it doesn't have to be cold or impersonal or just about getting through the worst day of your life. It can be about love, memory, connection, hope. A well-dressed woman approached us, extending her hand to Derek. You must be Emma's brother. I'm Judge Patricia Williams. Your father handled several cases in my courtroom over the years. He was a fine lawyer and a good man. Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate you being here. Judge Williams turned to me with a warm smile. Emma, I hope you know what an incredible thing you've accomplished with Eternal Gardens. When my mother passed last year, your team made all the difference for our family. The way you personalized every detail, the grief counseling you provided for my children, it was exactly what we needed. After she moved on, Derek looked at me with something approaching awe. A federal judge. You provided services for a federal judge. I've provided services for judges and janitors, Derek. CEOs and cashiers. Grief doesn't discriminate based on social status or bank account balance. The reception continued for another 2 hours, and I watched Derek's understanding of my life transform completely. He saw me coordinate seamlessly with the catering staff, speak knowledgeably with funeral directors from other companies, and comfort families who approached me with their own stories of loss and healing. But the moment that seemed to affect him most was when a young girl, maybe 8 years old, ran up to me with a hand-drawn picture. "Miss Emma, I made this for you." She thrust the crayon drawing into my hands, a colorful image of flowers and sunshine with "Thank you" written in careful block letters. "This is beautiful, Lily. Thank you so much. Mommy says you helped us when Grandpa went to heaven. You made it not scary." I knelt down to her level. "I'm so glad we could help, sweetheart. How are you doing?" "Good. I remember the stories about Grandpa that everyone told at his party. And Mommy doesn't cry as much now." As Lily skipped back to her mother, Derek wiped his eyes. "Emma, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just understand that success looks different for different people. I spent so many years thinking you were wasting your potential, but you were actually fulfilling it in a way I never could have imagined." As the reception wound down and guests began leaving, Derek helped me gather the leftover flowers to distribute to families visiting other graves. It was a tradition I'd started, making sure nothing beautiful went to waste, that every gesture of love found its way to someone who needed it. "There's something else," I said as we arranged bouquets in the back of my pickup truck. "The scholarship fund I mentioned, it's named after Dad. The Robert Henderson Memorial Scholarship for Funeral Service Education. Full tuition for 5 students each year who want to enter the death care industry but can't afford the training." Derek stopped what he was doing and looked at me. "You named it after Dad." He would have loved knowing that his legacy was helping other people find meaningful work, even if it wasn't the career path he originally imagined for them. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest. Of course, all those years when I was criticizing you, telling you to get your life together, lecturing you about responsibility, did it hurt? Did I damage our relationship permanently?" I considered the question seriously before answering. It hurt, yes, but it also motivated me to prove to myself that I was on the right path. Your disapproval forced me to be absolutely certain about my choices, to build something so solid and meaningful that external validation became irrelevant. So I helped you succeed by being awful to you. I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had all day. You helped me succeed by caring enough to challenge me, even if you were challenging me in the wrong direction. The fact that you wanted me to be successful, even if you didn't understand my definition of success, meant everything. As the sun began to set over Serenity Hills, casting long shadows across the peaceful grounds, Derek and I stood by Dad's grave one last time. The headstone was simple but elegant, exactly what he'd requested. "He's buried in a cemetery his daughter owns," Derek said quietly. "He's surrounded by gardens his daughter designed, tended by people his daughter employs, in a business his daughter built from nothing. That's not just success, Emma. That's legacy." "Our legacy," I corrected. "You're still my brother, Derek. You're still part of this family. And if you want to be part of this business, if you want to help me expand the legal services we offer to grieving families, I'd welcome your expertise." He turned to me in surprise. "You want me to work with you? after everything I've said and done. You're a good lawyer, Derek. You care about people, even if you sometimes have trouble showing it. And families dealing with estate issues, insurance problems, legal complications during the worst time of their lives. They need advocates who understand both the law and the importance of compassion. I'd have to learn everything from scratch. The death care industry, the regulations, the cultural considerations. I learned it from scratch too. And I'd be honored to teach you, if you're interested. Derek looked around at the beautiful memorial park, at the evidence of the business empire I'd built while he thought I was wasting my life. Emma, would you be willing to forgive a stubborn older brother who spent 8 years being completely wrong about everything? Only if you're willing to forgive a little sister who let you think she was a failure because it was easier than explaining why traditional success never felt like enough. We hugged, then really hugged, for the first time since we were children. And as the last light faded over Dad's final resting place, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The peace that comes from knowing that family love, like the work we do for grieving families, isn't about perfection or meeting expectations. It's about showing up, being present, and finding ways to honor what matters most, even when the path looks nothing like what anyone expected.